you so much, everybody. It's a great distinction to be kicking off the last day of presentations here at Hannover Fair. I'm Eric Yon. I'll be moderating this panel presentation. I lead go-to-market strategy for SAP Industries here at AWS. Interesting role because SAP is such an important partner. I think probably about 80–90% of the partners, customers here today have some footprint of SAP. But with that said, let's start off today, this morning, with a set of introductions. And why don't we start off at the end with my friend Magnus.
Hello, I'm Magnus Ackerson, and I lead go-to-market and scaling for the automotive business unit within AWS.
Fantastic. Yeah, so my name is Amit Sharma. I lead the discrete manufacturing product management practice at SAP. My role primarily is to work with the manufacturing customers to figure out what are the challenges and new trends that are coming, and how do we make sure our portfolio is evolving, addressing those needs.
I'm Bernard Mühlreiter, partner with McKinsey. I'm leading our digital and analytics work for what we call the advanced industry sector, which is basically manufacturing, automotive, aerospace, defense, as well as semiconductors. And I've been, helping industrial and manufacturing companies over the last 18 years in driving productivity increases and transformations, let's say, on the intersection of technology and transformation.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. And so the topic for today is really talking about this thing that probably has not been mentioned this week, which is about generative AI. But looking at generative AI from a business context. If you look at Hannover Fair, the predominant themes are really looking at edge workloads and bringing them back from the factories. What's critically important as we really start to reimagine the industry, operating models, business processes, and underlying transactions is really looking at that end-to-end journey in terms of the signals, the anomalies, right? The things that are actually, the events, if you will, that are going to really trigger the right business responses. And so as we move into this world of being more intelligent, more cognitive, more aware, this is really leading to new areas of what we are now calling agentic workflow and automation. So maybe as we start, Bernhard, thanks for that introduction. It's been a long week already. We are at day 4 of Hannover Fair, so I appreciate the audience joining us today so early. What are you hearing the chatter on the floor, and then if you can map that to also what you're hearing at the executive levels? What is the state of play around investments in generative AI? Just had a conversation with our friend here that's working very directly with this other little company called NVIDIA that seems to be important in this space around just where is the state of play?
Yeah. So, Eric, great question to kick us off. And let me take a little bit of a macro and a micro view. Like, if I take a macro view, obviously we have all read the news about, the tariffs that are kicking in for many European companies. Probably also, there will be reciprocal tariffs. So therefore, there is a lot of tension in the system to drive productivity improvements to somehow also offset the effect that, these tariffs may have on the profit of our clients. And we estimate 3% to 4% of EBITDA could be actually the upper level of what these effects, what these tariffs would actually mean for these players. This means they need to react. And if you also look, we are here in Hannover, in the heart of Germany. The productivity of especially European industrial companies have been lagging also compared to what we see in other regions. And one, let's say, key lever, and that is also what we've been hearing all week here at Hannover Fair, is obviously to really now move from a state of piloting Gen AI to something where you can really scale it. And if I move to the micro level a little bit, so the individual company, they have been experimenting with generative AI and AI, not only on the shop floor, but across the organization for the past 2 years. But very few, approximately 11% to our estimates, have actually been able to scale that technology. However, that is extremely important, because if you're not able to scale it, then you don't get the full impact, and also you cannot address the skill shortage that is also in the system. So we have currently 50% of industrial companies that are reporting actually a skill shortage, and many people, the baby boomer generation going into retirement, so therefore there is also the need to automate many of these activities that have been done. Now, that's the situation. Now, everybody experimenting, and then the question is, why can't they actually scale up their their Gen AI and their AI efforts? And we believe that in many cases the problem is that there is too much focus on, let's say, the technology part or the use case implementation part, whereas actually the other parts of the transformation are somewhat overlooked. We have this saying that we say it's never just tech, right? Tech is obviously an important enabler, a key enabler. Without the technology, obviously you cannot do it. However, what we also believe is you need other elements to accomplish actually that level of scale, and that is, first of all, you need to embed it into your corporate strategy, and it needs to be enforced from the top. So it needs to be the number one priority of the CEO to actually drive AI at scale. Number two, you need to also embed it into the organization and operating model. So we are now working with a lot of clients where we say we need to move away from a situation where business and IT is working in silos, and business has a request to IT and then IT delivers the service, to something where they actually have two in a box, business and IT, and they work together and implement those use cases and have let's say a clear ROI logic. Where do we invest and where do we actually get the benefit? The third element I would like to put forward is actually the change management. And what we have seen is that typically at the top, that commitment is there. So if you talk to the CEOs and to the CXOs, they want to deploy that at scale and have grand ambitions. If you look at the middle management layer, there it's much harder, right? And you need to win over actually that level of the organization as well to drive real change. Yeah. So that, I think, are a few of the things that are very important. But I would say for industrial companies in particular, this is one of, I would say, the key levers to regain the competitive edge. There is a lot of data that needs to be liberated in order to drive the full impact. And we are at a unique crossroads because it has never actually been that easy technology-wise to drive the impact. So we need to all work to make that happen.
So Bernhard, you touched on a number of pretty salient points there. The macroeconomic climate, right? The winds of change around technology and the never-ending pace of change from that standpoint. I can't think of a better partner to talk to about that for a response, as he's just framed up the problem statement from our friends at SAP. Amit, what are you seeing from an SAP perspective? I think SAP has made a significant pivot into cloud and SaaS and generative AI with Joule. I know that you are front and center with many customers as the product leader for high tech and manufacturing. What are your thoughts?
So just to build on what our friends from McKinsey said, so the macro thing that we are seeing currently, where as recent as yesterday night you have seen some of the tariff information that has come, so that will require building. We see it's a three level of architecture that is needed. So first is on the ground level, we have to set up the foundation. So we have to have the digital supply chains. So essentially, the workflows to execute supply chains have to be digitized. That is setting the foundation. And this is where SAP, all the way from design to operate, have been helping out manufacturers, and we have evolved our solution portfolio to meet the needs of today. Then the second layer we see is bringing the operational intelligence from the shop floor and combining this with the information that is residing in the IT system to build a kind of, a lack of better word, digital twin, or a digital understanding of how the factory is operated. And this is where are some of the new innovations like Business Data Cloud, which we recently announced, which provide a way to combine the data from different sources to set up that foundation. And the third step really is, once you have the data, once you have systems available and working, then you bring the aspect of generative AI and the agentic and autonomous part on top of that, where you have situations where if because of tariff or other geopolitical situation, you have to change the supply lines, which you have built over 25 years, working with different suppliers, different tiers, different level of expertise you have built. Now you have a challenge that you have to change them pretty fast, right? So once you have those foundational layers set up, which SAP has been helping manufacture for 30, 40 years, then it provides you the agility to move in that direction. And this is where the agentic part, and I also want to emphasize on the physical aspect of it. So we're talking about the agentic AI predominantly from the IT standpoint. But if you look at the innovation that is happening on the physical AI, where on the edge side, you have a lot of intelligence in the robots and all that. So SAP is also working with our partners from with NVIDIA as well as AWS, actually to bring that physical intelligence part in conjunction with the agentic part to provide this holistic AI experience that is needed, which is unparalleled, and we haven't seen any vendor is providing that.
Thanks, Amit. Moving on to Magnus. And so Magnus, as you hear Bernhard really frame the overall business and opportunity statement, and then SAP as a key partner in this space from an ERP and supply chain and manufacturing perspective. Yourself, your role here at AWS, responsible for scaling industry strategies and solutions. How would you frame this from your perspective, having been a practitioner, and maybe you could share a little bit about your history there, because I think you provide a unique point of reference.
Yeah, so I think generative AI is we're at an inflection point now where it will finally make AI ML democratized and readily available for just about anyone. And so, I keep thinking about my old days as a material planner. At the beginning of the shift, you log in, you run your MIP run, and you have this sort of massive amounts of exception messages coming right at you. And it really is like this advanced cognitive complex task.
Life
right?
is not steady state.
No, it's not, right? So, and there's a million decisions you need to make. Do I short this purchase order with a supplier? Do I find an alternative source of supply? Do I work an extra shift? Do I steal parts from someone else? Like, there's just a lot of different decisions that you have to make, and it's hard. And this is where LLMs and generative AI can augment this process in a significant way, from looking at information and synthesizing information to actually making sound business decisions, making those supply chain decisions about how to take action to deal with an exception. And then, of course, with the agents coming in, you might have to go and log into a supplier portal and update some information. You might have to do a warehouse transfer. There's a lot of things you have to go and do. And all this can now truly be automated with generative AI and agents in a way that actually has some impressive accuracy. So, and think about what that means for you as a material planner, and how your day is augmented and your productivity, right? I used to say that a good material planner might be able to own about 100 or 150 materials. Beyond that, your human brain just isn't capable of processing all this information. In this world, there's no reason why you can't own 5,000 and do a better job at it. So to me, it's an exciting and great time to be alive to see all this stuff come to life.
It surely is. Thanks, Magnus. So we want to really wrap up today, and I think what we'd like to do is come back to Bernhard. Bernhard, everybody here in this audience is either a partner, a customer, right? And I think what is some advice, having really kind of walked through in terms of just what's happening from a macroeconomic all the way down to the shop floor perspective? I think we've talked about scale, we've talked about business processes. How do we take a pragmatic and realistic step forward, right, to really make a relevant and meaningful push in really exploring new operating models and capabilities?
Yeah, so look, I mean, Eric, at the end of the day, it is really important, and that for me is like the key takeaway, to always look at that as a holistic system instead of just looking at the isolated elements of technology or strategy or anything else. So you need to craft actually a program where you change. My ambition is not to deploy technology. My ambition is actually to change the company and AI enable the entire company. And then you have actually the frame that you need in order to make it happen, because then you would all of a sudden say, okay, what does that mean? How do my processes need to change? How does my organization need to change, right? what are actually then the technology elements, obviously, that I need to build. And then you are actually in a totally different discussion. We call this rewire. So rewiring actually the company, rewiring basically our clients. And that is what we do more and more with our customers, with our clients. And there is also a dedicated task force that we have now set up. We call it the AI Accelerator, that is particularly looking at basically the scale up of these pilots that currently do not scale, and then the benefits cannot be realized.
Thanks, Bernhard. Amit, same question to you. We're right in front, a couple weeks into SAP's largest user conference, known as Sapphire. What should this audience be thinking? And many of these folks will be with us in Madrid as well as Orlando.
Yeah.
What would you impart to everybody?
Yeah, I think, I mean, AI is, you have gone through the conference and you have seen everywhere there's a term AI, AI, AI. And I think so technology is a means to an end. And this is what we are focusing on, that how do we deliver the outcome with the AI, which actually delivers the real value, like Bernhard was talking about. This is a holistic thing. We can't just throw tool on every problem. You have to have a holistic point, and this is what SAP is working. And you have been hearing us, we have been talking about a message of building the resilient, adaptive, self-healing supply chains. And with the advent of AI, both on the physical as well as on the agentic side, this vision is possible. So the time is not, why. I think time for me is it's not a question of why and when. The time is now for building those resilient supply chains.
Magnus, why don't you bring us home?
Yeah, I plus one on all of that. It has to come top down. Again, the technology is now at a level where it's no longer a barrier. I also want to emphasize that working backwards from the people and the humans that you're trying to help. I've done my fair share of mistakes of putting in real-time dashboards no one is using, or creating automation and nobody wants, because I failed to work backwards from the people that you're trying to help and the problems you need to solve for to give them a better day and give them better tools to do their jobs better. So I think it's also important to always also work backwards from those use cases and really bring the people along with you as you deploy this automation that is all around us today.
Thank you, everybody, for making time today. I think, the overarching themes are pretty clear. I think as I mentioned jokingly, life is not steady state, right? And I think what's happening is that everything up until this point has been deterministic. And I think as we really start to account for changes in the systems and the networks and the processes, all of that is rooted in data, in your ability to process and ingest data, contextualize it, and bring it back to trigger the right responses. And so my shameless plug today, we've actually launched a joint reference architecture with SAP. We are actually in booth 2. And basically, this is really the underlying mechanism that we are deploying between AWS and SAP to essentially enable agentic workflow and automation. And so thank you, everybody, for your time this morning. Great audience. We didn't know what we were going to get. There was nobody here earlier. The other thing to point out, too, if any of you wants to reach to any of us out on LinkedIn, please do. We are going to be kicking off a blog going forward, tackling this topic and highlighting successes where we see it. So Bernhard, Amit, Magnus, amazing job this morning. And everybody else, have an awesome Hannover Fair.
Thank you.
Thank you.